The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed wars end and peace begin. Its walls had heard every kind of speech that any species could give. But on this day, it would hear something new, something that no one expected, something that would change everything. Ambassador Cole walked to the central podium with slow and steady steps. She was a woman of 53 years, with hair that had turned silver at the temples and eyes that had seen too much. Her uniform was simple and dark, without medals or decorations. She had served humanity for 30 years, and she had learned that true strength did not need to be displayed. Behind her stood Commander Daniel, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that revealed nothing. He had been her security chief for 7 years, and in all that time, she had never seen him lose his composure. Today would test that composure more than any battle ever had. The chamber was full. Representatives from over 200 species sat in their designated areas, arranged in a great circle that rose upward like the inside of a bowl. Each species had its own section, its own lighting, its own atmosphere controls. The breath nitrogen, the required high humidity. The crystalline minds needed absolute stillness in the air around them. Humanity's section was modest. It sat in the middle tier, neither high nor low, neither prominent nor hidden. This placement had been deliberate when humans first joined the Council 163 years ago. The older species had wanted to remind the newcomers of their place. Cole activated the podium systems. Her image appeared on screens throughout the chamber, and her voice would be translated into 400 different languages simultaneously. She took a breath and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she said, "I come before you today with a simple message. Effective immediately, the United Earth Federation is withdrawing from this council. We will be leaving all shared territories. We will be ending all trade agreements. We will be closing our borders to council space." For a moment, there was silence, the kind of silence that comes when the mind cannot process what the ears have heard. Then the chamber exploded with noise. High of the Dominion was the first to react. He was a reptilian creature with 4 arms and scales that shifted color with his emotions. Right now, those scales were dark red with anger. He slammed his hand against his console so hard that the sound echoed through the chamber. "This is madness," he shouted. "You cannot simply leave. There are treaties, there are obligations, there are systems that depend on human participation." The delegate, a being that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a flower, flashed bright crimson patterns across its translucent body. This was the expression of extreme agitation. Even the crystalline minds, ancient silicon-based life forms who rarely showed any reaction to anything, emitted a sharp musical tone that indicated surprise. Cole waited for the noise to die down. She did not argue, she did not defend. She simply waited, and eventually the chamber grew quiet again. "I understand your concerns," she said, "but our decision is final. Humanity thanks the Council for the past 163 years of association." She had chosen that word carefully. Association, not partnership, not alliance, not friendship, just association, like strangers who happen to share a waiting room. Matriarch Celes of the collective rose from her seat. She was a serpentine creature, 15 feet long, with a face that was almost human in its expressiveness. Her species was known for their wisdom and their memory. They forgot nothing, and they understood much. "Ambassador Cole," she said, her voice smooth and cold, "you will explain this decision. The Council has a right to understand why a member species chooses to abandon its responsibilities." Cole smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time for this moment. "Responsibilities," she repeated. "Yes, matriarch, let us talk about responsibilities." She touched a control on the podium and the main display screen came to life. Data began to flow across it. Documents, reports, recordings, the history of humanity's time in the Council laid bare for all to see. 163 years ago, said, humanity was invited to join this council. We were told that membership would bring security, prosperity, and friendship. We were told that we would be part of something greater than ourselves. We believed these promises. We were young and hopeful and perhaps a little naive. She gestured at the screen. In the first 50 years, humanity contributed more military resources to Council defense than any other species of our size. We patrolled borders that were not our own. We protected colonies that had never shown us kindness. We bled and died for species who would not remember our names. The data on the screen showed the numbers. Human ships destroyed in Council service. Human soldiers killed defending alien worlds. Human resources spent on missions that brought humanity nothing but sacrifice. We did this gladly, continued, because we believed in the ideal of galactic unity. We believed that our sacrifices would be remembered. We believed that when we needed help, help would come. She paused and looked around the chamber. We were wrong. Commander Daniel watched the faces of the alien delegates. He saw confusion on some, anger on others, but on a few faces he saw something else, something that looked almost like shame. His grandfather had told him stories about the old days, about the hope that humanity had felt when they first reached the stars, about the joy of meeting other intelligent species for the first time, about the belief that the universe was full of friends waiting to be made. His grandfather had been on colony when they came. He had been one of the lucky ones who survived. He never spoke about what he had seen, but sometimes, late at night, Daniel had heard him crying in his sleep. Cole was still speaking. For 163 years, we asked for nothing but fairness. We asked to be treated as equals. We asked for the same consideration that other species received. And for 163 years, we were told to wait. We were told that our time would come. We were told that patience was a virtue. She shook her head slowly. Our patience has run out. Our hope has faded. Our belief in this council has died. And so we leave, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in sorrow, in disappointment, in the quiet acceptance that we were never truly welcome here. She stepped back from the podium. Goodbye, may you find the unity you seek. We will find our own path. She turned and walked toward the exit. Commander fell into step beside her. Behind them, the chamber erupted into chaos once more, but Cole did not look back. She had said what needed to be said. Now it was time to go home. The display screen in the council chamber continued to show its terrible history. Cole had left, but the data remained. The delegates sat in uncomfortable silence as the records played, one after another, each one worse than the last. The first record was 47 years old. It showed a beautiful planet covered in green forests and blue oceans. Colony, the screen said. Population, 3 million humans. The images were peaceful at first. Children playing in parks, farmers working their fields, ships coming and going from the orbital station. Then the came. There were a species that existed only to consume. They traveled through space in great swarms, billions of creatures moving together like locusts, eating everything in their path. They had no diplomacy. They had no mercy. They had no purpose except hunger. The recordings showed the first attack. Small ships descending from the sky, people running in terror, buildings burning. The screams were the worst part. The translators converted them into every language in the chamber, so every delegate could understand exactly what was being said. Help us, please help us. Where are the ships? Why is no one coming? The screen showed the council session from that day. High's predecessor had stood at the podium, calling for calm. We must assess the threat level before committing resources, he had said. The swarm may change direction. We should not act hastily. The human ambassador at that time, a man named Gregory Cole's father, had begged for intervention. His voice had cracked with desperation. 3 million people, he had said. 3 million human beings are dying right now. Every minute we wait, more of them die. Please, I am begging you, send help. The council had voted. 63% had chosen to delay. The had voted to delay. The had voted to delay. The had abstained. Only the smaller species, those who remembered what it was like to be weak and afraid, had voted to help. The human fleet had been far away, protecting a mining operation as required by treaty. When Gregory Cole received word that help would not come, he had done something that shocked the council. He had ordered the human ships to abandon their positions and race too. They had arrived too late for most. By the time the fleet broke through the swarm, only 800,000 colonists remained alive. 2,200,000 people had died waiting for help that the galaxy had refused to send. The council had been furious, not at the deaths, not at their own inaction. They had been furious at humanity for breaking formation, for abandoning the mining operation, for putting human lives above treaty obligations. Gregory Cole had been formally reprimanded. The reprimand remained on his record until the day he died. No one had ever apologized to him. No one had ever acknowledged that he had done the right thing. Matriarch Celes watched these old recordings with her ancient eyes. She remembered that day. She remembered voting to abstain. She had told herself that it was the wise choice, the neutral choice. But watching it now, she could see it for what it truly was: cowardice dressed up as wisdom. The screen moved to another record. This one was 32 years old. Human scientists had made a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication. The old system required relay stations every 50 light years. The new human system could send messages instantly across any distance. It would revolutionize galactic commerce and diplomacy. The council had responded not with congratulations but with regulations. The new technology disrupted market stability, they said. It would harm the profits of species who owned the old relay stations. Humanity would be required to license their own invention back to themselves at prices set by the council. The fees were enormous. Human colonies that had been prospering began to struggle. Human businesses that had been growing began to fail. Meanwhile, other species grew rich from human ingenuity. The alone made 17 trillion credits in the first decade from licensing human technology. Humanity had protested. Humanity had appealed. Humanity had done everything within the rules. Nothing changed. The council had spoken. The third record was only 8 years old. A human medical ship called the Mercy of Portland had been carrying vaccines to a human outpost struck by plague. The fastest route went through space. They had refused passage. They had cited biosecurity concerns. They had said that human biological materials might contaminate their territory. They had offered no alternative. They had simply said no. The human captain, a woman named Susan Park, had begged for permission. She had explained that people were dying. She had offered to let inspectors board her ship and examine every container. She had offered to take any precaution they wanted. They had said no. By the time an alternative route was approved, 14,000 humans had died. The vaccines had arrived too late to save them. The plague had burned itself out by killing everyone who could be killed. The council had expressed regret. They had formed a committee to study the incident. The committee had produced a report that blamed communication failures and bureaucratic inefficiencies. No one had been punished. No one had been held responsible. The delegate had not even apologized. Susan Park had resigned from the medical service after that. She had gone home to Earth and never left again. Some said she still had nightmares about the faces of the people she could not save. The screen went dark. The records were finished. High looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. No one would meet his eyes. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Finally, the delegate flickered with pale blue patterns. This was the expression of discomfort. "These events are unfortunate," he said, "but they do not justify abandoning the Council. Every species has grievances. We cannot allow emotional decisions to override rational cooperation." Commander Daniel was no longer in the chamber. He had left with Ambassador Cole, but if he had been there, he would have laughed, or perhaps he would have cried. It was hard to say which response was more appropriate. His grandmother had been on. She had been 7 years old when the rescue ships finally came. She had survived by hiding in a basement with her mother, eating insects and drinking rainwater. She had heard the moving above them, searching for food. She had learned to be perfectly silent, perfectly still, because any sound meant death. She had never fully recovered. She had lived to be 94 years old, but she had never slept well. She had never been able to stand silence. She had always needed some noise, some sound, to remind her that she was safe. She had told Daniel once that the hardest part was not the fear. The hardest part was knowing that help existed, that ships and soldiers and weapons were out there, somewhere, and they were simply choosing not to come. "The galaxy decided I wasn't worth saving," she had said. "That's what I learned when I was 7 years old. That's what humanity learned on, and that's a lesson you don't forget." The council chamber remained silent. The delegates sat with their thoughts. Some of them were thinking about the past. Some of them were thinking about the future. Some of them were thinking about what they had done and what they had failed to do. But none of them truly understood. Not yet. They would understand soon enough. The humans were leaving, and the galaxy would learn what that truly meant. 3 months passed after humanity's departure. At first, the Council told itself that nothing would change. Humans were a young species. They were small in numbers. They occupied only a tiny corner of the galaxy. Their absence would be barely noticed. The Council was wrong. The first signs appeared along the frontier. For decades, humanity had operated a network of patrol stations in the empty spaces between civilized systems. These stations watched for pirates, for scouts, for any threat that might emerge from the darkness. They were small outposts, staffed by small crews, doing small jobs that no one thought about. One by one, the stations went dark. Human personnel packed their belongings, powered down the systems, and went home. They left everything clean and organized. They left instruction manuals for the equipment. They left nothing that belonged to them. They simply left. Within weeks, the pirates noticed. Ships that had stayed hidden for years began to move. They tested the old patrol routes and found them empty. They attacked a luxury transport and stripped it bare. They raided a cargo convoy and killed everyone aboard. The demanded action. The demanded protection. The Council formed a committee to study the problem. "Why did we not have our own patrols in these areas?" asked one delegate. The answer was simple. They had not needed their own patrols. The humans had done it. The humans had always done it. For over a century, human ships had kept the frontier safe, and no one had thought to ask what would happen if they stopped. The trade routes suffered next. Human convoy escorts had been famous throughout the galaxy for their reliability. They never abandoned a ship. They never accepted bribes to look the other way. They never gave up, even when the odds were against them. Other species had convoy escorts too, but they were not the same. Escorts would retreat if the enemy was too strong. Escorts would negotiate if the price was right. Only human escorts would fight to the death for cargo that was not even theirs. Merchants had preferred human escorts. They had paid premium prices for human protection. Now that protection was gone, and the merchants had to make other arrangements. Insurance rates tripled within 6 months. Some trade routes became too dangerous to use at all. The galactic economy, which had been stable for centuries, began to shake. But it was the small things that hurt the most. Ambassador of the Republic was a creature of habit. Every morning, she came to the council cafeteria and ordered coffee. She had developed a taste for the human drink during her first posting to Earth 60 years ago. The bitter warmth helped her think. The ritual helped her prepare for the day. One morning, the cafeteria did not have coffee. "I am sorry, Ambassador," the serving machine said. "Coffee is no longer available. Supply has been discontinued." Stared at the machine. Discontinued. Coffee has been available here for 100 years. The supply came from human territories, Ambassador. Human territories are no longer trading with Council space. Stood there for a long moment. It was such a small thing, such a trivial thing, but somehow it made the situation real in a way that all the reports and statistics had not. Humans had never made a fuss about coffee. They had never demanded recognition for sharing it. They had simply brought it with them wherever they went and offered it to whoever wanted some. It had spread across the galaxy almost by accident, carried by human traders and diplomats and soldiers who just wanted to share something good. Now it was gone, and no one had thought to stockpile it. The medical situation was worse. Dr. Vance was a human researcher who had spent 15 years studying crystalline mine degradation. The crystalline mines were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, ancient beings of living silicon who had witnessed the birth of stars. But they were dying. Their bodies were slowly breaking down, and no one knew why. Dr. Vance had made progress. She had identified the cause of the degradation. She had developed treatments that slowed the process. She had given the crystalline mines hope for the first time in. Then she had gone home. Her laboratory on Station Apex stood empty. Her research files were archived in the station's computers, but no one else could understand them. Dr. Vance had a unique mind, a unique approach, a unique genius that could not be replicated. The crystalline mines sent formal inquiries. They sent informal requests. They sent personal appeals. They offered money, resources, anything. The response was always the same. Dr. Vance had returned to Earth. She was not accepting communications from Council-affiliated institutions. She wished the crystalline mines well, but she would not be continuing her work. The crystalline mines had never asked for help before. They were too proud, too ancient, too sure of their own superiority, but they asked now. They humbled themselves before the Council and begged for intervention. The Council could do nothing. Dr. Vance had broken no laws. She had fulfilled all her contracts. She had simply chosen to stop working for species who had never valued her. High called an emergency session. His scales were gray with stress, a color that few had ever seen on a. "The humans are waging economic warfare," he declared. "They are deliberately withholding their resources to punish us." Matriarch Celes coiled her long body and spoke in her smooth, cold voice. "No, they are not waging war. They are not punishing us. They are not doing anything at all." She paused to let her words sink in. "That is the problem. They are simply no longer doing what they used to do. They are no longer protecting our borders. They are no longer escorting our merchants. They are no longer sharing their food and medicine and science. They are taking nothing that was not theirs. They are breaking no laws. They are merely ceasing to give." The chamber was silent. "We never noticed how much they gave," Celes continued. "We never counted it. We never thanked them for it. We only noticed when they stopped." Wanted to argue, but he could not find the words. Everything Celes said was true. The humans had given and given and given, and the Council had taken and taken and taken. And now the giving had stopped. The galaxy was learning what humanity had been worth. The lesson was painful. The lesson was expensive. The lesson was one that would not soon be forgotten. But it was only the beginning. The worst was yet to come. 1 year after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council did something unprecedented. They sent a delegation to Earth. Not a diplomatic message, not a formal complaint, a delegation. High himself would lead the mission, accompanied by representatives from every major species. It was the greatest gesture of respect the Council had ever shown to any species. Some of the older delegates could not remember anything like it in 1,000 years. The journey to human space took 3 weeks. The delegation traveled in a diplomatic vessel, the finest ship in the Council fleet. It had crystal viewing ports and gravity adjustment systems and food synthesizers that could produce any meal from any culture. The delegates were comfortable. They were well fed. They were prepared. They were not prepared for what they found. The human border was marked by a line of automated beacons. The beacons broadcast a simple message in all languages. You are entering United Earth Federation territory. Unauthorized vessels will be escorted out. Hostile vessels will be destroyed. This is your only warning. The captain sent their diplomatic credentials. For 3 hours there was no response. The delegates waited, growing increasingly nervous, paced back and forth, his scales shifting through shades of yellow and orange. Finally, a human ship appeared. It was small, barely a quarter the size of the vessel, but its weapons were clearly visible. A human voice came through the communication system. Galactic Council delegation, you have permission to proceed to Earth. Follow the transmitted route exactly. Do not deviate. You will be monitored. The route took them past human colonies and stations. What they saw shocked them. The last time any council delegate had visited human space, the colonies had been modest. Small settlements, basic infrastructure, nothing compared to the great cities of the older species. Now those same colonies were thriving. New buildings rose everywhere. New ships filled the space lanes. New technologies hummed with power that the delegates did not recognize. They have been busy, Matriarch Celes observed quietly. Said nothing, his scales had gone pale. The orbital stations around Earth were closed to them. The delegation was directed to a single landing site in the region once called North America. They descended through clouds and came to rest on a platform surrounded by green fields. A human was waiting for them. He was a young man with black hair and a pleasant smile. His name was Benjamin Park, and he was a civil servant in the Department of External Affairs. Welcome to Earth, he said. The Council of Humanity will receive your delegation. Please understand that this is a courtesy, not an obligation. Follow me. They traveled by ground vehicle through human cities. The streets were clean. The buildings were beautiful. The people they passed looked healthy and happy. No one stared at the alien delegates with curiosity or fear. They simply went about their business as if visitors from other worlds were nothing special. Where are your soldiers? Asked. Your security forces. Benjamin Park smiled. They are around, you just cannot see them. The vehicle brought them to a government building in the capital city. It was not the largest building or the most impressive. It was simply where the President of Earth conducted her business. President Laura received them in a garden. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair and kind eyes. She wore simple clothes, nothing that indicated her rank or power. She was watering flowers when they arrived, and she finished what she was doing before turning to greet them. Hi, she said. Matriarch Celes, distinguished delegates, thank you for coming such a long way. Had prepared a speech. He had worked on it for weeks, choosing every word with care. He began to deliver it now, his voice formal and humble. President, we come before you to acknowledge the mistakes of the past. The Galactic Council recognizes that humanity has been treated unfairly. We recognize that grievances exist which have not been addressed. We are prepared to offer reparations for historical injustices. We are prepared to negotiate new treaties with more equitable terms. We are prepared to issue formal apologies for specific incidents, including the colony tragedy. He paused, expecting some reaction. Laura simply listened, her face calm and patient. We wish to rebuild what has been lost, continued. We wish to welcome humanity back to the Council. We wish to move forward together as partners and friends. Laura nodded slowly. She set down her watering can and walked among her flowers, touching a bloom here and there. I appreciate the gesture, hi, she said. Truly I do, But I must ask you something, why now? Because we recognize our errors, because we wish to make amends. Because they are pressing your borders, Laura said gently. Because your trade routes are bleeding money. Because Dr. Vance is no longer saving your ancient friends. Because 100 small problems that human hands once quietly solved are now becoming big problems. Opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. You did not come because you regretted how you treated us, the president continued. You came because you finally felt our absence. Those are not the same thing. She turned to face them, and for the first time they saw steel beneath her kindness. My grandmother survived colony. She was 7 years old when the rescue ships finally came. She spent 2 weeks hiding in a basement, eating insects, listening to monsters walk above her head. Do you know what she told me about that time? No one spoke. She told me that the hardest part was not the fear. It was not the hunger. It was not even the death all around her. The hardest part was knowing that help existed somewhere out there in the galaxy, ships and soldiers and weapons that could save her, and knowing that the galaxy had decided she was not worth saving. Laura's voice remained calm, but her eyes were bright with old pain. That lesson shaped my grandmother for the rest of her life. It shaped my mother. It shaped me. And it shaped every human who has heard the story of. We learned that we were alone. We learned that we could only count on ourselves. We learned that the galaxy would smile at us and take what we offered, but when we needed help, we would be left to die. She walked back toward the delegates. We do not hate you. Hatred requires energy, and we have spent all our energy on better things. We simply stopped waiting for you to value us. We stopped hoping that you would see us as equals. We stopped believing that our sacrifices would ever be recognized. She spread her hands, indicating the garden, the city, the world beyond. And in that stillness, in that quiet acceptance, we found something wonderful. We found that we did not need your validation. We did not need your approval. We did not need the Galactic Council at all. Matriarch Celes spoke for the first time. You have prospered without us. Yes, Laura agreed. We have. Not because we wish to prove anything to you, simply because we finally put our own people first. We stopped sending our best scientists to solve your problems. We stopped sending our soldiers to fight your wars. We stopped giving away everything we had, hoping to earn respect that never came. She smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. We are happier now. Our people are safer. Our children grow up without learning that they are second-class citizens of the galaxy. That is worth more than any treaty you could offer. Felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt shame. Then there is no hope, he said quietly. No possibility of reconciliation. Laura considered the question. There is always hope, she said, but hope requires change. Real change. Not apologies made because you need our help. Not treaties negotiated because your economy is failing. Real change in your hearts, in your societies, in the way you see species who are different from you. She looked at each delegate in turn. When you can offer that, perhaps we will talk again. Until then, we wish you well. We truly do, but we will not be returning to the council. We have found our own path, and it is a good one. The meeting was over. The delegation returned to their ship and departed from Earth. They had come with offers of gold and apologies. They left with nothing but their thoughts and the weight of their regret. 5 years passed after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. The galaxy continued to turn. Stars were born and died. Species rose and fell. Life went on as it always did. But nothing was quite the same. Humanity remained apart. They had not closed themselves off completely. Trade still occurred, but through neutral intermediaries and carefully controlled exchanges. Diplomatic communications continued, but with the formal distance of strangers rather than the easy familiarity of friends. Humans visited council space sometimes as tourists and scholars, but they no longer lived there. They no longer worked there. They no longer bled there. The Council had been forced to change. Without human patrols on the frontier, other species had to step up. The Republic, a small nation of gentle beings who had never been warriors, created their first military fleet. The collective, ancient and proud, finally learned to ask for help when they needed it. Some species rose to meet the challenges. They turned out to be surprisingly good at peacekeeping. Their gentle nature made them excellent mediators, and their new ships were designed for protection rather than destruction. They found purpose in the role that humans had abandoned. Others struggled. Though accustomed to wealth and comfort, could not adapt to a galaxy where they had to earn their safety rather than buy it. Their economy suffered. Their influence faded. They became a cautionary tale about the dangers of depending too much on others. The swarm had been pushed back, but the cost was enormous. A coalition of species had formed to fight them, but it was a fragile alliance, held together by fear rather than trust. The members argued constantly about strategy, resources, and leadership. They missed the steady human presence that had once kept such coalitions functioning. The crystalline minds continued to degrade. Without Dr. Vance, their condition worsened year by year. They searched for other researchers, other solutions, but no one could match what she had been doing. Some of the minds accepted their fate with ancient dignity. Others simply went dark, their consciousness fading into silence. On Earth and throughout human space, life was good. The economy flourished. Without the burden of council fees and regulations, human businesses grew and innovated freely. New technologies emerged that would have been suppressed or taxed under the old system. Human colonies expanded into unclaimed space, building new worlds without asking anyone's permission. Children grew up knowing the council only as a distant political entity, something mentioned in history classes and news reports. They did not feel the old wounds. They did not carry the old resentments. They simply lived their lives as citizens of a proud and independent civilization. Cole retired from diplomatic service 2 years after her famous speech. She bought a small house by the sea, in a place where the waves were gentle and the sky was wide. She spent her days gardening and reading and watching the sunset over the water. Visitors came sometimes. Historians wanted to interview her. Politicians wanted her advice. She received them politely and answered their questions, but she never agreed to return to public life. One young scholar, a woman named Tors who was writing a book about the departure, asked her the question that everyone wanted answered. "Do you regret it, Ambassador Cole, walking away from everything humanity had built with the Council?" Sat in her garden, listening to the waves. She was 70 now, and her hair had gone completely silver. Her hands were spotted with age, but her eyes were still sharp. "We built those things because we believed in something larger than ourselves," she said slowly. "We gave and gave and gave because we thought we were contributing to a shared future. And when we realized that future was never meant to include us as equals, we had a choice." She smiled, and unlike the smile she had given in the council chamber, this one reached her eyes. "We chose to stop being grateful for scraps. We chose to build our own table instead. And you know what? The food tastes better when you have grown it yourself." Wrote down her words. She would include them in her book, and millions of humans would read them. They would become part of the story that humanity told itself about who they were and where they had come from. In the council chamber, sat in his place and looked at the empty seat where the human delegation had once been. He was old now, older than any should be. His scales had faded to a dull gray and his movements had slowed. But he still came to the chamber every day, still performed his duties, still tried to hold the council together. Sometimes he remembered the humans he had known. Ambassador Gregory Cole, who had begged for help during and been reprimanded for saving his own people. Ambassador Cole, who had walked away with such quiet dignity. Commander Daniel, who had stood behind her without speaking, his face a mask of controlled emotion. He had not liked humans. He had thought them too young, too eager, too emotional. He had seen their helpfulness as weakness, their kindness as naivety. He had taken their contributions for granted and dismissed their complaints as whining. He understood now. He understood what they had really been. They had been the conscience of the council, the ones who remembered what it meant to be vulnerable, the ones who helped others because they knew what it was like to need help, the ones who gave without counting the cost, because giving was simply what good people did. The galaxy had lost something when humanity left, something that could not be replaced by treaties or technology or money, something that had made the universe a little warmer, a little kinder, a little more hopeful. Would carry that understanding for the rest of his days. It would not change anything. The humans were gone and they were not coming back, but at least he knew now. At least he understood. The empty seat remained empty. And in its silence, the council heard all the words they should have spoken years ago, all the thanks they should have given, all the respect they should have shown, all the help they should have offered when help was needed. The humans had not left in anger. They had not left in vengeance. They had not even left in sadness, really. They had simply, quietly, decided that they deserved better. They had decided to stop waiting for the galaxy to love them and had learned to love themselves instead. That quiet departure echoed louder than any war ever could. It would echo forever. In the stillness that humanity left behind, the Galactic Council finally understood what they had lost. They understood that some gifts, once rejected, could never be reclaimed. They understood that some wounds, once inflicted, could never fully heal. They understood at last the true cost of ingratitude. And they would live with that knowledge for the rest of their long, long lives. The stars continued to shine. The planets continued to turn. The universe continued on its endless journey through time and space. But somewhere in the vast darkness, on a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humanity had found peace. They had found pride. They had found a future that was entirely their own. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.